Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Returning to the show is my co-host, Adam Heist. Adam reached out to me and says, I want to come up with a new concept for a show. And I'm like, all right, well, what are we going to call it? And what are we calling it, Adam?
Yeah, so to be fair, we shamelessly stole this from Tim Ferriss, and a good buddy is Kevin Rose. Every once in a while, they basically jump on and they riff for about an hour. Life, business, like the topics of the day. And theirs is called The Random Show, so we couldn't completely steal everything, but we were talking literally just a couple of minutes before this, and we're going to call it Broad Match. So it's kind of a catch-all. We're going to talk about Amazon. We're going to talk about life, philosophy, all the things that matter. So yeah, I think.
All right, so so that we don't scare everyone off as we wander into different subjects, let's start with Amazon. And let's look at 2024. What do you think is going to matter the most in 2024?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I've had to really think as a Amazon seller and brand operator myself, and I've done it over a number of different years with a number of different brands. And there's iterations. Everybody knows there's iterations to the game. I think we're frankly entering a phase of the Amazon game that even I haven't fully calibrated yet. There's changes taking place. I don't have a specific definitive playbook, and it's not as prescribable as maybe as it would have been a couple of years ago. So there's a lot more nuance to it. But I think as we talk about the eras of Amazon, I think that the era that we're going into now, keywords still matter. It's obviously a big search engine, but I think keywords are going to matter less in terms of a tactical, strategic approach to winning on Amazon. They're going to matter, but I think that Amazon's gotten quite clever at catalog management and how they're looking at listings and associating relevance. And there's a lot that we frankly don't know exactly how the dust is settling. These are active experiments that us as sellers and certainly Amazon's doing with their algorithm. But I think keywords will not matter less in terms of the buyer journey, but I think that they're going to matter less as a lever that you have access to differentiate yourself. So for me, that's something that's absolutely we've been seeing. And we talked before actually about, exact match not, working the same. Putting keywords in listings doesn't necessarily have the same oomph. Pay-per-click strategies are a little bit different. I think that's one difference. But I think the cataclysmic shift that I'm pretty definitive on at this point is that the offer and the product is going to matter more than it ever has. And that's going to be the quality of the product, the differentiation, how it's visually represented. The price is a big one, reviews, all that stuff in an offer. But I think it's funny, I've started to work with a really large seller. We're starting to kind of piece together, what do we do next? We're talking about a brand that's going to push 9 figures. And I think the operations, the keyword stuff, pay-per-click, I think that's going to be the ante. I don't think that there's going to be, obviously there's going to be people that are lead at pay-per-click, but you're going to get incremental gains. You're going to get 2% here, 1% there, maybe 4% here. If you're really good at operations, supply chain, staying in stock, you're going to get those little nudges. I think the material shifts in Amazon moving forward is all going to be about conversion rate optimization. And assuming that we're not going to get into product development, that's a whole other thing, but you got to have a good product and a good offer to make that happen. But I think it's going to be creative visual identity and A/B testing. I think that as much time as we spend on pay-per-click today and as much time as we spend on operations, I think the third horse that's going to come into play is in-house people that are basically testing stuff all the time, testing listing images, testing secondary images, redoing the storefronts, redoing A+ content. Because frankly, if you assume that keywords are kind of an ante, Amazon's figuring that out on our behalf. If you assume that pay-per-click is going to convert how it converts and you can optimize a little bit, but if you're talking about 18 months into a product's life cycle, there's only so much you can do. The next thing that you've got to do is to really impact conversion rates. And for me, that's the visual identity. So I think that's the big shift, man. I think it's going to be less technical and more creative.
Yeah, I definitely think I concur with what you're saying there. I definitely think more vigorous testing, right?
Yes.
Because people talk about testing and they do a bit and then it's not structured and it's not regular enough, right? So we've got multivariant testing, or Amazon calls it simultaneous now. I would say, and then we've done this as well, I don't have enough data on it, but when you test a dead product, i.e. it's not shifting, you can't split test it, right? Or run an experiment, as in the terminology for Amazon in Seller Central. is because the limitation, if you haven't got 700 sessions in that 30-day period, you won't be able to run a test. So do extreme testing. We did an extreme testing, and what we did is we just focused purely on sentiment. I'll talk about sentiment in a moment. And it went from 2 units a day to a 7 or 8 units a day, just because we threw away the rule book of keywords are indexed and everything else. Now, there's not enough tests to qualify that, and never do that to a hero product. But when you have dead products, test to the extreme.
Yep.
And with hero products, one element at a time, and be extremely careful. They are, and that covers everything. That could be your images, it could be your bullet points, it could be your title, etc. But with hero products, always one at a time. Dead products go to the extreme. Sometimes, obviously, you can't use Amazon experiments. So just throw away the rule book and throw whatever at the wall, because you've got nothing to lose. You're going from 0 to something, or stay at 0. It's a zero-sum game, effectively.
Yeah.
Again, test based on sentiment and look for wins. So you also want to make sure that all of your attributes are correct, including images as well. You can find a couple of tools if you just sign up for a free AWS account. Do a search for Amazon Comprehend. This will where you can work on your sentiment score. And there's another tool in there called a recognition tool, which is for image attributes. I've mentioned this before. Someone was selling some pens, so it should have been something like color underscore pen should have been the attribute, but instead it was first underscore aid, as in the first aid box. So Amazon's seeing that. So that attribute had to be corrected. You can raise a ticket for that, and you can download a list of attributes inside of AWS. Now, Amazon Comprehend is quite straightforward as well. The testing with that is interesting because, let's just say with Amazon Comprehend, you can use Claude or you can use Chat for this. You can literally cut and paste the scoring system. Now, there's multitudes of the scoring system, but what you're looking for is a positive score above 80. So you might have a neutral, a negative, etc., etc. So what you can do is you can write a prompt for it. You put your title in there and your bullet points as an example. And then you want to say you want to increase the sentiment score. Now that's going to drastically change the listing because it's going to move more towards sentiment than focused around search terms. But you can also, at the end, after you tested it, you could also write a prompt to re-add back the keywords and weave them in as natural language processing in the title and the bullet points as a caveat there to correct that. Also start to look at testing as well. I've done a show with Colin, and he's got more data on this than me, Colin Raja, and he was testing his main keywords. Let's say it's beard oil, but he also had semantic match style keywords in a listing. As an example, you could say beard conditioner oil, right? So it's more of a semantic match, or just beard conditioner. And so what he did is he tested a load of the words that were in the listing as phrases, but he didn't run ads on those. He only run them on the main keywords, but didn't have the main keywords in the listing. And he see a shift in terms of increased rank on all of the other words in the listing. Now, there's still more to test here to get a bit more of a diagnosis, but we're talking about working within the fractions of the margins now, because it's got so tough on Amazon, and it's about looking at a test outside of the box as well. You're going to need to dial in on your own website. So the product detail page is there. Install your heat mapping and make sure you're split testing and using browser validation tools that validate across different platforms, different versions of browsers, because a lot of money's left on the table, because you'll see your conversion rate not going up, and then you're trying to test the title and bullet points, but it might only validate properly, say let's say you're on an Apple desktop computer and you're using Safari, and it looks amazing on there, but it's a shithouse on all the other browsers, right? So you're not seeing that, but you're looking at a conversion rate. So there's a tool out there called Browser Stack. I've done another show which will come up, and you'll see that in there as well. And also understanding the anatomy of a landing page and documenting all of your tests, because a lot of people look at, grab this swipe file. Now, an example, if you're selling, ED medication, or you're selling diet pills, of course, that creepy kind of white background, black and red text, shit ton of text coming down, fake testimonials and stuff will work on morons, right? They will work on the moron. However, you're not a fucking moron, and nor is your customer. So if you think you can do that with a high quality product, you're sorely mistaken. So you really have to think about when you're doing these, when you're learning about stuff, when it comes to conversion optimization, again, you must understand the customer avatar, etc., and the importance of good quality design, focus copy, keep it simple, was the word KISS, keep it silly simple,
Keep it simple,
not
stupid.
insult the customer. Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. So the point I'm trying to get around to, instead of waffling on, is that if you're Apple and you've got a landing page, which you wouldn't, but as an extreme example, and you've got one of these long landing page with all the hypnotic fucking bullshit text on there, and it's with a white background with black text, and it's bolded, and it's got all of these call to actions, and your eyes are rolling around your head, that ain't going to work for Apple, because it's going to make them look cheap and scammy. Now, if you're kind of doing affiliate marketing and you're selling certain things, cheap signups and stuff, are great. That will work for that. But understand, when you're looking at what products that you're selling, you have to align that with your design and your foundation and stuff for testing. Anyway, that's the end of my rant on conversion optimization.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, frankly, that I'm guilty of, and I think this is also something to be mindful of on that point, and I think it bleeds into 2024 strategy and buyer behavior, et cetera, is and this is going to be a little bit facetious, but the average shopper in the US is not going to be that bright. And so I think that sometimes we over sophisticate how we represent our products. And I think one of the things is, if you take yourself as a business owner, somebody who's been living and breathing this brand and product for 2 years, what if you're Sally or Kevin typing in a keyword on Amazon and buying it, and you think about their journey, what they've got going on in their lives? I think another part of A/B testing, conversion rate optimization, is going to be to get into the mind of your customers. And that might frankly be removing some of the sophistication layers, getting simpler, getting a little bit more crude with how you represent your products, and not overthinking all the little bells and whistles, because they may not matter. And so I think the whole theme of this for me is that conversion rate matters a lot. And I think that that's going to matter more than optimizing pay-per-click and keywords. Obviously that stuff still matters, but everything's going to be better if you optimize for conversion rate. And I think that's going to be pretty.
Here's a little train of thought to think about. If you've got a simple product, keep your landing page simple, keep your copy simple, keep your images simple. It's a simple product, and if it's at a lower price. If you're selling a sophisticated technical product, you still use the plain language, but you will need to use the technical language that goes along with it. So if you're selling, not saying you would, a camera, you still need to use language that relates to the customer, that is technical, because they are your target. It's when people try to use probably a good example. Let's use an example away from products. A service-based company that is selling you high consultancy business services. They do paradigm shifting, a high left to the right hockey stick, and they'll use all of this wanky language, right? That's what I'm trying to say. Stay away from the wanky language and the pompous language, and keep it simple. But if you have got a more product that does need explaining, break that out into videos as well. So you got some written content. So you have a header, you have a description, then you have 3 bullet points, then you have a video, then you have a design. You might be some mapping towards that technical product, but still make it a journey and still make it interesting. But weighing off the wanky language against technical language and keeping the rest around it simple.
Love it.
Ups and downs. Let's start with you. The truth about the ups and downs of running an Amazon business.
Yeah, I think this is a sign of the times. It's also a sign of human nature. I think nobody wants to be vulnerable or fallible naturally. It's not a natural thing. the human mind and the psyche goes towards comfort, and part of that is avoiding things that are difficult, embarrassing, that challenge the concept of who you are. And so I think one thing that I realized, I spoke at 4 events this year. I'm never going to do that tour again, but it was a really cool experience. I spoke at your event. I spoke at another one in Europe, spoke at Kevin King's, and then wrapped it up here in Australia. And I've got access to a lot of good buddies that I've met in the space and just people in general that I've come across. And something that you don't see a lot on LinkedIn, you don't see it on Instagram, you don't see it on YouTube. That's the place where you bring your highlight reel. You know what I mean? That's your screenshot of your best month, the big win that you had, the big launch you had, the pay-per-click ACOS you got down for a campaign or a product. And it's natural, right? When you have something that's cool, you want to share it with the world, and it's human nature. But I think what people don't share is the dark moments, and they don't share the down months, the down quarters, the down years. They don't share the despair. They don't share when their business is down 40%. And so kind of, getting into the circuit a little bit more this year, talking to people more, again, talking to people I trust and know in the space. Almost every single person that I spoke to, this is beer conversations, sidebar, one-on-one stuff. Everybody's had pain the last year. And, I kind of thought to myself, I don't always share my bad stuff. 2022 is a really, really difficult business and personal year for me. My Amazon business was down 40%. We've since recovered, luckily, and kind of doubled it since. So we're on the path to recovery. But man, when I was on my knees, I didn't want to do a YouTube video about being down 40%. That's not fun. That's not something you want to share. So I think one thing I would say to people out there is that you don't know what anyone's ever dealing with at any one given time in business or life, but I guarantee you everyone's going through something. And if they're not going through it right now, they're going to go through it this year. And so I think the challenge, with the way that our world operates, and I think the Amazon ecosystem for sure. And again, I've been a participant in this too. I'm guilty as other people are, so I'm not trying to point fingers here. Is that they think it's all well and good. Well, this YouTuber, this person on the podcast, this post, what's wrong with me because I'm struggling and my business isn't working that way. I'm having challenges. Let me tell you, everybody's having challenges. They may not share it. It may not be comfortable to be vulnerable. It's not a fun thing to kind of fall on the sword and share embarrassing things. But I think if we all get authentic, don't compare yourself to that stuff, because everybody I spoke to this year, big sellers, little sellers, it's something that we all deal with. And I think it's important to call that out.
Yeah, I mean, I've been criticized, to my face, people will talk anyway, but for being so brute force.
Yep.
With it, a couple of times, when I was in Australia, when I did over there, the feedback was you in the army? Ask us and I came across negative, and I'm like, look, I'm going to tell people how it is. I'm not going to wipe your ass for you. It's a shit house out there, and people are going to struggle. It's our jobs. Every person that steps on this stage is to explain that. You might not like my approach, but I'm absolutely right. Let's get the elephant in the room and see it for what it is. It is what it is. Sellers are struggling. End of story. What do we do about it? There's no point sitting there because you're trying to flog a fucking service to someone. It's not acceptable. You've got to be straight with people. But on the flip side, maybe I need to have a bit more self-awareness about how I channel that message. Because it might come off as a bit negative, but that's not my intent.
No, yeah, Danny, I think your approach is 100% correct. I think what I was thinking about on this topic specifically, and I agree with everything you just said, was it's okay. And if you think you're the only one, if you think you're the weirdo, if you think you're the failure, if you think you're the odd one out because everything else that you see is the highlight reel, that's not the case. You are the norm. Now it's being realistic about what are those challenges and being honest about it. I think that's what you bring to the table, and it's been a breath of fresh air. And then to your point, when you have the vulnerability in the environment where you can actually be fallible, I think that's missing in our space, and I think making that more normal is really important.
It's probably because I don't care as well. In meaning is I'm not here to impress you. Yep. I'm here to deliver information.
Yep.
I don't have the watches, the car, none of that shit interests me. None of that you believe it or not, none of that interests me. I might go and speak on stages and stuff because I enjoy it. I want to support sellers. And on a selfish point of view, it's nice to get out this fucking studio and go out and see some people.
Yeah.
Rather than eat, sleep, repeat, gym, eat, sleep, work, and do that. It's nice to get out and see people and spend time with people.
Yeah, agreed.
Right? But I still stand by the point. It's like, it is what it is. I'm not going to give, that's not who I am. And I'm not going to present it in that way. If people want to do that, that's entirely up to them. I'm not here. You notice with the platform, this is not a call out platform or anything. What people do is their fucking business, none of mine. Like every listener of the show can turn this off right now because they've got their own agency and listen to another podcast if they don't want to hear this. And I respect that too. But I'd like to think is that I'm trying to give you a realistic approach to what is out there. And sometimes we have to deliver the shit sandwich. But there's also the good stuff as well. It's like, don't say, oh, time to get off Amazon. Like you see these thumbnails on Amazon. It's like, how my business went da-da-da-da. Is Amazon still the place to be? And all this bollocks. Because they're trying to get clicks and it's clickbaity. What I'm saying to you, listen, it's fucking rough out there. What are we going to do about it? All right? Let's have a think. We can go through all of these different things and come up with a solution. Not all will work, but the more solutions we provide, the more ideas that we have, the better the things can have a chance of improving.
Yeah, 100% agree.
What else with the ups and downs do you think this year as well?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've had to really sharpen my sword on as part of my personal growth is dealing with uncertainty. Again, if you think about how the human mind works, and you think about how we've patterned most of our lives, even if it's bad, we like to go to stuff that we know. Even if it's not serving us, we like the loops that we know and that we remember, that our brain and our bodies get used to. And so I think what we've started to see a lot over the last year for me personally and professionally is I don't know all the answers of where Amazon's going. I don't know how all this keyword stuff's going to play out. I don't know how pay-per-click's going to happen. I don't know if Amazon's going to increase fees. I don't know if the organic rank's going to change. I don't know if the economy is going to be good. I don't know what's going to happen with China relations and U.S. relations. I don't know about the Suez Canal. Like there's always an endless amount of unknowns. And I think that 2023 brought more of those than usual in a typical 12-month period, especially because we hadn't had a lot of adversity, frankly, in preceding years. And so for me, I think part of ups and downs for me is getting comfortable with the unknowns. Like that is, I think the people that are comfortable in the unknown and are excited about the unknowns, I think that's a real big difference for me, is you can either be scared about it or you can be excited about it. Like, shit, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next month. Maybe it's bad, maybe it's good, but it's going to be a good movie to watch, and it's going to be fun to participate that and be part of my life experience. So yeah, I would say that unknown element and getting comfortable with it is a really important kind of theme of those ups and downs for me.
Yeah, I think what you're going to look at is, I think one way of looking at it is called having internal locus of control versus external locus of control.
100%.
And so what we can control, what we do know what we can control our thoughts, our feelings, our words, which I need to get better off because I rant every so often, and our behaviours. They're the only thing we can control. So how we see the situation is really important, because we can't affect externally. We can't bend life purely to our will on a given basis.
Yep.
But we can control how we look at those. And like you said, is that there's all these unknowns, and if you embrace them, because the unknowns come in whether you like it or not. So if you embrace the unknown, then you're going to be a lot more chill, a lot more peaceful with it. It doesn't mean to say you won't have a wobble or be concerned, or you need to up your pace and step up everything you do, not get sloppy, be on your purpose, and understand this is the burden of performance on a daily basis. But you can choose to look at it in a different way.
Yep.
So with the on the business side, again, I'm going to give you an extreme example, but there's good news behind that extreme example. So we had a client that returned, and whilst there's all these different goals on the table, I had a single goal, and that goal was for that client to still be here December 20th. I threw every fucking resource, every element of my black book was stretched to make sure that we achieved that goal. Because I wasn't worried about the money and everything else. I was more concerned that my friend, a good friend of mine, is okay come December 20. Now, we achieved that as a team and everyone that was involved. It didn't make a full recovery, but most of the other marketplace significantly grew. So what happened there, whilst it didn't do a full recovery of last year, we got the numbers up greatly because we had the different revenues from the other Amazon marketplaces. So a great thing to take from that struggle is the diversity of the marketplaces, because if you do have a product that is not working or was working and it's maybe hit by numerous things, including the end of a product cycle, there's an opportunity there for the other Amazon marketplaces where it could work, as long as there's a product fit and a cultural fit for that product. So all in all, I mean, the other brand owners on the agency had like killed it, and some had not so great, and some had a better one than last year. Do you see what I mean? It goes across the board. But when you look at the extreme end of things, you know, we're gone from discussions of will we still be here in December to growing in other marketplaces. Do you see what I mean? So you take that as a win. Now, this year is going to be much more dial in, you know, and I had to do a lot of work on a day-to-day basis, pretty much 7 days a week, and parked a lot of stuff to make sure that when I give my word, and my word's my bond. And that was my end goal. And it took a lot last year, but they're in a good place now. And now they can start to grow back into it. So what I'm trying to explain to people is that sometimes you're looking into the darkness, but then someone shines like a torch back at you. And generally that comes from what I've learned in pulling out of, you know, going from what I call the darkest hour just before dawn, because I've had loads of them through my life. And what I've always found is as long as you've got ideas, you can win. The dangerous one is when you run out of ideas to implement. Does that make sense? So you've got to make sure that you can cultivate those ideas, because if you can do that, there's always a new opportunity to make things better.
Yeah, and I think to add on that, and is you're never going to solve problems from a dark place. If you bring that anxious, the world is ending, this external event is impacting me, and then you're tight and you're playing that way. I personally have not ever had a creative thought or a productive behavior exist when I reside in that space. But that's the default when those things happen to you. So I think it's also learning to disassociate yourself, which you said earlier, from the external events. How do I bring calm inside? How do I solve this problem? That center is where those solutions come from. And then at least you have a fighting chance, right? That's where you get the control back, when you've got the ideas that you can go implement, test, and see. And it's funny you said that, because I talk about my business being down 40% in 2022. The thing that saved it and really helped grow it was international. There was other stuff that was there too, but like back to basics, I think that's something that a lot of sellers need to think about. Like, what are the 3 or 4 basic things I can do if the shit hits the fan? I had Hero Asian go down for 6 weeks over Q4. Not fun, but honestly, it didn't really concern me that much, because we were, up 80% globally on other markets, and it was like it covered. I didn't want it to be down, but it's like I wouldn't have freaked out in the same way that if I didn't hedge my bets,
Yeah, indeed. Another thing, a point that you wanted to bring up is separating your true identity, like in your case being an Amazon seller. Should we look into that a bit more? Because it's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a conversation. I don't know if you remember it, Danny, but we had it at some point in person. We've been lucky enough to share the stage and meet in person probably 3 different times this year. But again, we like to get into philosophy, which is kind of a fun place to reside. But I learned this the hard way, like most lessons are learned. I had basically had an ego death, man. I sold my business, had a lot of amazing things happen in my business life, and then a lot of bad things happened in my personal life, and then that led to business challenges, all the rest of it. And man, I remember sitting there. It was a really low moment. It's like, when you think your life's going to go a certain way and it's been going good for a while and you're having these upswings, and then it basically gets collapsed underneath you. Like all the things that you thought were going to happen, all the future possibilities that you thought were going to exist go away. It's a scary place to be. And what I discovered is that my ego died when all of those things took place. But the reason that it was painful is because I associated myself with those things. Said another way, I thought that the things that I did were who I was. And I think it's a very, very, very dangerous association to make. And it's a natural one to make, especially if you get, deeply involved in something. So for me, I was obsessed with Amazon, man. It was like my way out of corporate. For the better part of 3 years, it's all I thought about for the most part. Just lived it and breathed it. And then I found success with it. And then I started to share stuff on YouTube, which then you get that success loop that comes back and you're shitting. Okay, now I've propped myself up as this person in my brain that is an Amazon seller, that's a successful Amazon seller, that shares and helps other people be successful on Amazon. Well, guess what happens? If you have a 6-month period where your business is down, you're not a successful Amazon seller, you're not a good entrepreneur, you're not a good person to teach other people. So my association with who I was basically was like fucked, for lack of a better word. And that's a really deep hole to dig out. And so through that process, what I learned was I was never a successful Amazon seller. I was never an entrepreneur. I was never somebody on YouTube that taught people how to do stuff. Those were things that I did and that I enjoyed doing and I got fulfillment of. And they were hard things that challenged me to grow as a human being. But who I was inside was not any of those things. Nothing outside of you, no person, no thing, no achievement, no identity marker is who you are. You're a different person. And so I had to have that stuff go away for me to realize that. We use this analogy just kind of offline here before, but it's like pro athletes. Why pro athletes get so screwed up, or one of the major reasons, is they go on whatever their career length is. Let's say they have a 10-year career, they're making millions of dollars, they've got the adoration, they have microphones, they get identified in public, they have the locker room chat, all of these things that become their identity. And then when they stop playing sports, yeah, people still know them, but they're not hitting the winning shot anymore or scoring the winning goal. They're not in the locker room, they're not getting the attention, they're not getting all those things in life that they got. And so who they are as a human being gets challenged because they've associated themselves as being a pro athlete. And I think for me, it's a cautionary tale because it hit me really hard. And it wasn't just the Amazon stuff. There was other legs on the stool in my life that I had to kind of dig out of as well. But selling on Amazon and building a brand and pursuing business is a fulfilling thing and a challenging thing that you're doing to better your life. And there's a lot of things that make you better and that contribute to who you are as a person. But you are not your Amazon business. If you have a shitty month, if your business fails, if you're not doing as good as you thought you would or as good as other people, if you associate yourself with that activity and that being your identity, it's at some point it's going to go away. Like anything in life, everything's fleeting. And at some point it's not going to be there. And when it's not there, if you've associated that with who you are, it's not healthy. So detach yourself as that. It's an activity you do. It's not who you are as a human being.
Yeah. And I suppose to feed into that, what we're talking about from a side view, we're talking about hierarchies. So if you think, everywhere you go, there are invisible hierarchies, right? In business, there's a hierarchy. There's a CEO at the top, and then you've got your managers, and you've got employees, and then you've got the cleaning team, et cetera, et cetera. They're all kind of levels. I'm not saying you should respect anyone any differently in that before we get into that. But there are hierarchies. And one of the things you're talking about there is if you look at, say, you're a 7-figure seller or an 8-figure seller or a 9-figure seller, that feeds into the status inside of a competence hierarchy, right? So that shows signs of terms of status signaling as well. You can go to an event and go, hi, how you doing? Yeah, what do you do? Yeah, I'm a 7-figure seller. And it goes back to that point there as well. What happens if you don't longer become a 7-figure seller. Let's say you had a rough year and your turnover's down. What decisions do you make? Do you then get concerned more about not being a 7-figure seller in the sense of the way that you run your business? Are you going to carry on running the business with a very, 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 very tight margin to keep that? Because if you've bought into the possibility of that identity, and that works for anyone, that could be work for DJs. I used to be a DJ and I'm a service provider. I run conferences. There's a certain level of a status within of that. Do I allow that to feed into my identity when I sit at home? No, because I know personally, like, I had a great fall from the music industry, whilst I was never the level of a Drake or anything, because I was working on the independent side. But the way that I felt the pinch, as an example, is I was doing a show on Kiss FM, which, only a handful of people get throughout the generations to do. Out of hundreds, if not thousands of DJs, you get those opportunities. So I did a Kiss show for a couple of years. While I was doing the show, I'd done 18 tours of the States. So every other week, I'm doing mini tours. I'm going out and DJing Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Over time, I started to build up, and started to build a following over there, returning back to cities and stuff. I remember just after 9/11, I came back off my last tour. My label deal got dropped. When that got dropped, my Kiss show was dropped because it's all associated because of that status, if you like. And I remember getting off the plane. I'd done my last gig. I think it was, where did I play the last gig? It might have been Giant, I think I was playing at. I come back. I remember it's the 3-day tour. I came back and literally everything had collapsed. And my friend Warren, I went and worked with him, helping him for 80 quid a day at Ford's in Dagenham in Essex, the big Ford plants, fixing trailers. So I've gone from DJing, playing my own records in front of 2,000 people at my last gig, to still having jet lag, to be working on, fixing trailers in the rain. And that is a real humbling experience, So I do understand that is a proper ego death. And I suppose that's why I don't look at that stuff now. Like when people, would say, "Oh yeah, you're Danny McMillan." I'm like, look, I'm a fucking guy almost bald, sitting on the fucking podcast waffling. That's all I do. It's nothing magical about it. And I say to people,
yeah, but I'm sure you feel the same as me, Danny, that I'm glad that my ego died. It was one of the hardest years of my life when all that went down. But I don't want to associate myself with those things because it's false. It's a false identity. And so sometimes it needs to be taken away for you to realize it wasn't what you thought it was. And you're a better human being for disassociating yourself from those. And I think you probably look back on that being like, shit, yeah, if I would have attached myself as Danny the DJ, maybe you wouldn't have
different iterations. I was, because I was a kid. I'm a young boy, I've got the chance to fly around the world. I've got a Kiss show. You're paid, you're getting on flights, carrying your record boxes, walking into clubs, It's magical. A lot of people would love that, right? And then it all come crashing down. You lose your Kiss show, you lose your label deal, and then with them gone, you can't tour anymore. So your money dries up, and you're literally that fast. You're all basically working in the rain under a trailer. I mean, that was like a big fall. But what I did learn from that is that, one, you can't you can't sit there and prune your status. Your status is a side effect from a good work that you do that is consistent over time. So your only thing is, you go, that can go away at any time, but if I carry on doing this, this is where my focus should be. Get up every day, go through the motions, do the work. And then all these extras, all these invites to events and stuff, they'll soon pass at one day. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter, because all you'll focus in over here. See them as add-ons, not the main feature. Do you see what I mean? Because I think I've seen it where people start to fall into their own, they become a character. So they get known and then they disappear into this character and they get lost in their own little deluded bubble. But then if you walk down the street and you're carrying your Tesco shopping, no one cares. You're not Drake and you're not Rihanna. That's where we're tadpoles in the Amazon pond, and that's it. Do you understand? And if you can look at it from that point of view, what matters is the work that you do, not the status that comes with it.
Yep.
So, biggest personal and business lessons for 2024, what would you think would be for you?
Yeah, it's been, like I said, a very interesting, transformative couple of years for me. I think it's honestly been a process of deduction. I think a lot of times when we're looking at the future, we're looking at our Amazon business, we're looking at our personal lives, whatever it is, spiritual journey, whatever the case may be, we're looking for what thing we need to do. What's the next thing? What's my next thing I got to stack? What's my next skill? What's my next brand? What's my next product? What's my next hack? I literally just sold almost all of my personal belongings about 4 months ago. I lived in a van for the last 2 months in Australia, time of my life, but I had 2 cars, 15 years worth of furniture, 8 bikes, just stupid, like just gluttonous consumption. And I looked at my life, man, and I was like, you know what? This stuff doesn't make me happy. And so I stripped my life down purposely. And it was one of the more liberating things I've ever done. Lived in a van for 2 months. Might sound like a weird thing for a 41-year-old dude to do, but ripping up the east coast of Australia for 2 months in a van was fun as hell, and it was a blast. So I think, and same thing with my Amazon business. It's like, look at everything that you have and you need. This is my big lesson to answer your question more succinctly. Everything that you have, need, and will ever be is currently within you right now. There's no material purchase. There's no Amazon screenshot. There's no launch. There's no person in your life. There's no experience. All those things are great human experiences, but everything that you ever have, need, and will become is within you right now. And so for me, it was a de-layering process of unleashing and liberating myself from all of the things that weren't that and that didn't matter. And that goes for business, that goes for life, that goes for personal possessions. So that was a big, big lesson for me. Is I've spent a tragic amount of my life on the hedonic treadmill, trying to find the next thing, trying to find the next accomplishment, trying to buy the next thing that will make me happy, all that stuff. And for me, it was the realization that I just need to get to the core of who I am and let a lot of stuff go, emotionally and in material possessions, to get closer to what I think we all want, which is just peace within ourselves. So that's big lesson, man. It took me a long time to learn it, but glad I learned it this past year.
Yeah, I mean, for me is structure.
Love it.
So every day I eat the same foods at the same time. I go to bed at the same time. I train at the same time. I work whatever it needs to be done. And then I've mentioned sleep, which is vitally important, which I've been terrible. I used to trade off like 5 hours and stuff, but now I've got a method that I do all the same things every day, as boring as it sounds. But this regimented system makes me the most effective. So what it's happened is cutting down on the traveling it benefits every area of my life, my personal life, and also in business. So to give you an example, from early November last year, right up until December, it was chaos because I went to Australia, and I mentioned on the shows all the nightmares going to Australia and stuff before. But the short version is, went to Australia, amazing, but had nightmares getting out there. And then I caught COVID. Then I get to Thailand, unaware of COVID. Howard went to the hospital. He got cleared of COVID, and then Fee sent me a screenshot. She popped for COVID, and most of the people had. So I contacted the promoter and said, "I'm not leaving this room. You're going to have to carry on without me. Here's the DJ equipment for the after party," and then hold up in there. Then I waited till I was well enough to get over the worst of the COVID because I delayed my flight. And then I came home. Cheryl had set up a pod in the spare room. I was in there another 4 days, right? Still working on the laptop, but in isolation. So I was allowed out Thursday night after multiple tests to make sure I'm clear not to pass it on. And then we had Black Friday, so I had to deliver all the clients. So out comes the black book and the stress levels go up Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Clear all that. Tuesday, wash down, reset. Wednesday, packing up in the car, go to London to deliver the Christmas parties. So I've got 3 side events and the main event. So that's Thursday, that's Friday, that's Saturday. Get in a cab Sunday, come home, just stay in bed all day from Sunday until Monday. And then I had an operation on the Wednesday. And it was just chaos, like back to back. And it's taken me a good couple of weeks to get back on. So like Christmas, I was at home. The girls went to Paris. Christmas Eve, I'm home. The family's home then, but Christmas Eve, I'm home, nowhere. Christmas Day, home. Family on Boxing Day. Then the girls went away up until New Year's Eve. No going out New Year's Eve. I've been like a Mormon. I've been like Spartan life, but it's been amazing, and everything is regimented. As boring and as dull as it sounds, those boring and dull things actually make everything else better. And that's what I'm working on this year, is to really make sure that my regiment's in order. I don't have a morning routine. I get up and I have salt water, fires up the adrenals, wait an hour before because the adenosine for coffee. I'm straight to work and then I'll train, then back to work. That's my morning routine. It's the momentum behind it and managing to get 7 hours sleep.
Yeah.
Like it's rare for me since 2015 to do that without napping in the day.
Yeah. Dude, I 100% agree. And it's funny, it kind of ties into my van life experience. I was in a super small van. Well, I mean, it's a big van to drive, but it's a small living space. So you can't really keep that many clothes in there. So and plus I was wearing board shorts and, at the beach all the time anyway, so I didn't need many clothes. But like the space is super small. It's boring at night, so you go to bed early, you wake up early. Very simple, very structured. But I think the simplicity and the structure of life and taking away the things that don't matter and leaning into the things that do, it's amazing how quickly those incremental commitments and disciplines totally transform your life.
Favorite thing of 2024 so far for you?
For me, it was, I don't do this often because I have pretty high expectations for myself. And I don't like I've never really been a person that pats myself on the back. It's just kind of I think you come from the same cloth as me. It's just how I was brought up, whatever else. It's just you don't celebrate yourself much. But I think, I was looking the last couple of weeks, man, and it's like what it took for me to be in Australia. I've been in Australia since November 3rd. And I was looking one day, like just chilling at the beach. Again, my boring little van, just eating whatever, like boring little food. Had a surfboard and a bag full of clothes and just sitting there. Never thought my life would be there at 41. But I was like, to know all of the things that had to be done for me to be there was special. So favorite moment for me was just the gratitude of simplicity and taking in the little things in life. And sometimes it's good to be proud of yourself and know what it took for you to be standing on 2 feet, looking at the view of wherever it is in the world that you're looking to have those experiences. So that was my coolest thing. How about you?
It's a boring one again, but right now I'm very much on point. I'm a bit delayed on a couple of bits, but very much on point with all the targets that I've set and how I've structured the days and what I've got to produce on each of those days. For the first 2 weeks, I've stayed on top of it. So great. I've still got 50 weeks to go. But that's the exciting thing for me in a weird, sadistic way is that if I can now, what I'm doing now, and keep that consistency across the 52 weeks of the year, it's going to be a great year all round. And I'm excited about what's coming ahead. But what are you most excited about coming up in outside the first 2 weeks going forward into the new year?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that's got my blood flowing with Amazon. Again, a lot of this I would call it the next era that's kind of emerging and shifting under our feet. I don't know. There's not a lot of definitive answers across the board, but I'm just having a shit ton of fun experimenting with stuff right now. Got some new brands coming up. Been involved with some bigger brands. I've got my existing stuff and just all the tinkering that's been doing. It's been super fun just to try to figure it out. It's kind of like it's like you did the Rubik's Cube and it took you some time to figure out, and then somebody comes in and takes your square Rubik's Cubes and gives you like a hexagon one and throws up, and they're like, here, figure this one out now. I'm in the process of that right now. So the thing that I'm most excited about is to continue to experiment, to have a playful approach to Amazon, and to be able to tinker in the business again and getting enjoyment out of that. I'm super excited about that. And then for the first time probably in my life, I'm actually excited about the unknown, which is nice. It's a peaceful place to be, but there's a lot of unknowns. I don't know where a lot of things are going to shake out, but to be in a state of peace and excitement about that, I'm pumped about it. So kind of esoteric answer on the latter one, but yeah, it's me. How about you?
Yeah, I think being able to be invigorated on different projects as well, which, I've mentioned the Men Plus thing for a while, and obviously I always prioritize this end of my life, right? Everything related to Amazon. But what else this has always been able to done is the creative levels that I have now is giving me more energy for the other projects, and I'm more effective with my time. So right now I'm about 45,000 words into the book, which I'll deliver the first draft to my publisher on February the 1st. I'm looking at an investment with a friend of mine who's a doctor, NHS doctor.
Oh, wow.
And what we're doing with the Men Plus and what we plan to do with the business going forward is exciting, because normally, you have you check the doctor box. I can't go into what it is. You check the doctor box. There's validation there, right?
Of course, yeah.
Then you find out your doctor, who you plan to work with, is going to be on the show with Sir Alan, regardless of how long he's in the show for. It's still 8 million eyeballs. Then that said doctor has 100,000 following. Then you go, well, okay, we've got the funds, check. We've got the doctor, check. We've got the route to market, because between that and the other investors, we've all got channels. So you've got your route to market as well, and they all cross over with what we plan to do. So I'm excited about that. And obviously you've got Seller Sessions Live coming up, and been training my clients at Databrill on some optimization stuff. So a lot of my stuff at Databrill is a lot more experimenting. Like I've got the guys who manage all the PPC, but a lot of my stuff is the experiments that I can feed to the team. But what I'm getting into now is training these experiments with the clients so it can scale faster. So they apply I'm giving them the tools to run the tests. Do you see what I mean? Because then basically, you could do it for them, and that's great. But for them, it's whether they stay with the agency or not. They have got new skill sets that they can apply to their business, and then they can train their team, because that's a lot easier to scale than having a funnel where I am the bottleneck. So I'm making a habit now of, 2 or 3 clients a week I meet, and then I'm doing training sessions with them, and then they'll run tests, and then the test base gets bigger, and then we can write better prompts and things like that. So I am excited about this year, and I think a lot of it comes back to that discipline. Doing the same things, exact same things, day in, day out, and really getting a good night's sleep. Probably the next time I leave this village will be Seller Sessions in May. Which, can we mention what we discussed about you and Seller Sessions?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, never say never, but I'm pretty confident that that's the case. So yeah, let's go ahead for sure.
So this is Adam's retirement party. Seller Sessions will be the last gig that he speaks at. And that'll probably include, you won't come back next year, but we'll see if we can drag you out of retirement. But that's going to be amazing. And then on Sunday, we're going to do a little birthday for Colin Raja as his birthday that weekend. So we'll give him a bit of a fuss. But yeah, it's been great speaking today. Any final words before we go?
No, man, I like the format. I think it's fun. I guess if anybody has any suggestions for the next broad match show, we can definitely add it to the mix. But I think these will be a fun way to mix it up from the usual. And yeah, man, it's wild that it's 2024. It's great to reconnect with you, man. And we had a really hell of a ride in 2023. It was fun to lock arms with you on a lot of fronts as a friend.
Well, all of our gigs were exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, it was. We were on the same.
Apart,
tour,
Thailand. You didn't do
Thailand.
Thailand.
Right. I didn't. That's right. Yeah.
But we've done exactly the same gigs.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Cool.
yeah, hell of a ride, man. Looking forward to the rest of the year. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, and it'd be good to get Sharon back soon as well. So you'll be seeing Sharon.
Yeah, been thinking about you, Sharon. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys, thank you for joining us today. Adam, thank you for the first in the series of Broad Match. We'll be back here to do the same format again next month. I'll be back next week, and soon you'll see Sharon returning to the show. Take care of yourself and your family. Much love, and I'll see you again next week.